My name is Ferdy Goode, and I'm from Arbor Vitae, Wisconsin, and I'm a birch bark canoe maker today here up in Spooner, Wisconsin.
Is this your canoe right here?
This is my canoe right here, sitting on the lawn here today. It's a 14-foot birch bark canoe, and it's a canoe that I built back in 1990. It's my favorite personal canoe. It's been on many adventures in the far north, the Quetico Wilderness, the Boundary Waters, and other local wilderness haunts here in northern Wisconsin and in the UP of Michigan also. I've been doing this sort of work here now for, let's see, about 35 years now.
35 years.
Time's been flying. And over the course of that 35 years, I have been able to produce a total of 66 birch bark canoes.
Wow.
Which isn't an incredible amount of work or anything, but it's still quite a feather in a hat, nonetheless, for someone in this day and age where it's a labor of love versus a necessity, you might say.
So does the techniques and the craft and the skill, did it all emanate with the Native Americans, or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is Native Americans of North American continent here have to be accredited with the invention of the canoe and also the snowshoe.
Snowshoe, yeah.
And even today, with the modern materials that you see, the canoes are manufactured with, they still retain a lot of the same characteristics as far as the width and the depth. Obviously, they're pointed on both ends.
Yeah.
I guess the only difference is pretty much the modern materials. The canoe just can't really be improved upon.
You know, when you hear about a birch bark canoe, my first thought is that maybe that would be very vulnerable to, because birch bark seems to be rather flimsy, or not flimsy, but thin. That would be vulnerable to puncture.
Well, it is. Some respect is actually needed because of that. It is the waterproof skin of the birch bark canoe is the birch bark itself.
Yeah.
As it comes off the tree, it is 100% waterproof. It needs no soaking time, it needs no preservatives, nothing at all. All that's necessary to seal the birch bark canoe is the seams where the cuts are made to shape the canoe, and also the ends of the canoe, because you need to close the ends. This particular canoe is made from one continuous piece of birch bark.
Oh, how did you do that?
That goes from one end to the other, and it goes from gunnel to gunnel.
Was that a fairly wide tree that you took this from?
This was a big tree.
Okay.
This tree was, when I hugged the tree, I could just close my hands around the tree.
Is that typically the way birch bark canoes are made?
Years ago, they made a lot of canoes like that because the trees were available. In this day and age, there's less and less trees of this particular quality available due to logging and various other activities.
It's a lot smaller.
They just don't, and they don't have a long lifespan anyway. The average birch tree doesn't have a lifespan much more than 100 years.
Oh, wow.
So under ideal conditions, I mean, it might only get to be something like this here, but nonetheless, you would use it anyway. The idea is to get the length. You can always attach more bark up higher above the water line, but you want to keep the so that you don't have any seams on the bottom. And you'll see that it's not flimsy.
So what happened here? Is this like some repair here, or is that where I see some like thread or?
This is the binding that lashes the birch bark to the gunnels.
I mean, right here. Is this like tar or what?
This is pitch.
Pitch
from a spruce tree.
Oh, really? So it's all natural.
It's all natural.
And what kind of wood did you use inside?
White cedar.
White cedar.
Mm-hmm.
So did you mill all this wood yourself, or did you buy it, or?
I collected from the forest.
Okay.
And then I split it by hand.
All hand.
And then I shave it by hand.
So as you were doing over here, everything's handmade in this.
Exactly. It takes a long time.
Wow.
Typically, back in the day when birch bark canoes were being built as a seasonal activity, it was primarily a family event. The little kids would be out in the swamps digging up the roots and collecting the pitch from injuries in trees. The women
get over here. Get the sun in your face.
The women were doing a lot of the sewing with the split roots on the canoe, and the men, of course, did the woodwork.
Right.
With you know, the skills and strength that it takes to tear pieces of wood apart with your bare hands and shave it down to nicely shaped pieces for the finished craft.
So how does a birch bark canoe handle the water versus, say, some of these other wooden canoes?
Oh, they're lively creatures, let me tell you. They're alive. They're just like a leaf on the water, and it takes, it's quite an art to paddle a birch bark canoe. I've had some people who thought they knew how to paddle a canoe jump into a birch bark canoe, and they were kind of lost.
Oh, really?
And the canoe has a mind of its own, and it's hard to control the mind of a birch bark canoe sometimes.
Is it light?
Very light.
Is it?
It has no keel, so it's very smooth. The wind can take it sideways.
Okay.
You know, it's difficult to have total control of it at all times, especially if it's windy out. Under ideal conditions, you'd want to paddle when the water's a little bit calmer.
Okay.
Much more enjoyable.
Any other features that we should notice about this birch bark canoe? One continuous length of birch. What is this material right here? Is that leather? Or?
This is split spruce or tamarack root.
Okay.
And these are found underneath the spruce and tamarack trees. They're the roots of the tree. And they're grubbed out of the ground, split in half, and the little rootlings and stuff are trimmed off. The bark is peeled. The small end of the root is sharpened, and it becomes the needle and the thread. And it's the sewing element for the birch bark canoe.
Oh, wow.
So, lots of work for that Indian way, I guarantee you.
It's nice.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to point out about that? Or is, let's look at inside of it. Let's see. From this angle. Get a little bit better angle on the sun there. All this was done by hand.
All done by hand.
Wow, look at that. It's had a better chance. And what were you doing over here? You were
shaving down a rib for a canoe with a crooked knife.
Okay, crooked knife.
It's a one-handed, handmade draw knife.
And this is cedar you're working with?
This is white cedar.
White cedar.
Yeah. White cedar is the tree of life. It's also called the Arbor Vitae.
Yeah.
And it is the primary wood for all the wooden components in the birch bark canoe, except for these cross pieces. These are usually made of hardwood, but all the other components throughout the canoe are all the white cedar.
Why white cedar? What's?
It splits very straight. This is hand split. This is not sawn. Mm-hmm. It carves easily. It's rot resistant. It bends very easy, and it is less likely to rot. It's very rot resistant, so it's a great wood. It's a great wood to use. Even in the wood canvas canoes, which was developed basically from the birch bark canoe, the components, the planking and the ribs anyway, are all cedar too.
Can I get you planing that down a little?
Sure.
Get you. See what you're doing here. So how do you know when you've got it down to the width you want it? is it all eyesight, or do you use any measuring tools, or?
No, it's just done by eye. I try to maintain a fairly consistent thickness to the rib, but the width itself can vary, of course, depending upon the piece. And the shorter pieces of wood are used in the ends of the canoe where the rib doesn't have to be as long.
Right.
And then the longer pieces obviously are used in the center or towards the midsection where you need longer
I mean, the
lengths.
thickness. How do you know you got the right thickness?
I try to carve it to somewhere around 3/8 of an inch thick.
Okay.
And it's done by eye. After a while, you kind of develop an eye for it, and especially if you make one, if you carve one, you always got that example. You can look at it and you can compare it, and you say, well, I got to take that one down a little bit farther yet because it's not as thin as this one right here. So you just keep working it.
Do you sand those once you get it down to certain?
Oh no,
So those are not sanded at all.
no sand. That would, I wouldn't want to do that because that would take away all of my handmade knife marks. And they belong on the birch bark canoe, and that shows that it's handmade and not sanded. If you see ribs that are perfectly smooth, like in the wood canvas canoes, the reason they're so smooth is because they've been sanded.
Probably been plain too.
Or plain.
Plain and sanded.
This is my planer.
Right there.
Yeah.
Did you make this tool?
This is a handmade tool by myself. Yeah. Crooked knife.
Well, you're a living historical lesson here. That's cool. That's neat. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for continuing to make these. That's
Thank you
quite
for
a legacy.
stopping. I have a passion for this sort of work, and I will continue the legacy as long as I'm able to find the components and put them together.